Designed by Mr. James Dresser, a student of the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. The property along the shoreline is known as Library Park. Mrs. George Sturgis, an early summer resident, gave this land, along with her cottage that once stood here, to the city of Lake Geneva back in 1894. Her gift came with the strict stipulation that the property always be used as a public park. Her cottage served as the city's first library until this new building was completed in the 1950s. We'll see the site of the second George Sturgis home further down the shoreline. Now during the tour today, I'm going to be pointing out many interesting and beautiful homes and estates. Some of these are remnants of a bygone era here on Geneva Lake, an era of elegance back when this area was referred to as the Newport of the West. This was in reference to Newport, Rhode Island, the famous summer resort town on the East Coast. The time period will be referring to is roughly between the years of 1870 and 1920, when the men who built these estates were at the forefront of Chicago's business and industry. As you'll see, the development of the Geneva Lake area is closely tied to the growth of the prairie town, known today as Chicago. The first large summer home built on the lake was built in 1870 on this site beyond Pier 7 for Shelton Sturgis. He and his brothers were business partners and each had summer homes in the area. The original mansion, called Maple Lawn, was torn down a decade ago, and this beautiful new tan home was built in its place. Behind it is that large gray home called the Annex, which was built in later years to house the overflow of guests and servants from the main house. The Annex is now called Acorn Manor. This first group of homes is known as the Geneva Manor subdivision. The Geneva Manor was built on 37 acres of Levi Z. Leiter estate, which was known as Linden Lodge and dated back to 1879. The main mansion, which stood behind the subdivision's beach and park area, contained more than 30 rooms. Inside were 19 fireplaces, one of them even conveniently located in the master bathroom. Levi Leiter co-founded Field Leiter & Company, which in later years became known simply as Marshall Field & Company. His fortune was founded, however, on his real estate investments. Linden Lodge stood on this site until 1939 when the property was subdivided. Now throughout the tour today, you're probably going to notice that about 99% of the piers here in Geneva Lake are painted white. There's no law or ordinance stating that this has to be the case, but white is a very neutral color. It's pretty cool on your feet during these warm summer months. It also does a pretty decent job of hiding what those seagulls leave behind. So with all this being said, we do get a lot of questions regarding Pier 20 here and why it's painted tan instead of white. The only really honest answer we can give is that it hasn't yet succumbed to the peer pressure. The jokes are only going to get worse.
Look at those houses, Gabby. They
So yeah, I'm on the boat right now and I have to be very quiet, that's what they said. But yeah, hope you like this. Right now we're on the lake, not in the lake, we're not swimming in the lake, but we're on the lake, on this boat.
This handsome Victorian boathouse on the shoreline is one of the few remaining structures of an estate known as Snug Harbor. Snug Harbor was built in 1881 for Mr. and Mrs. George Sturgis. George and Mary Sturgis had 9 children, so their large French chateau home with 15-foot ceilings on every floor suited them well. A 5-story tower dominated the shore side of the home with a unique circular tower, providing a distinctive addition to the main living room and the master bedroom. Their home was located in the open area to the left of the boathouse and stood here until 1957 when it burned due to an electrical short circuit. In 1947, that estate became known as Covenant Harbor Bible Camp, owned and operated by the Evangelical Covenant Churches of America. This next group of homes is called the Geneva Bay Estates and is built on the former site of a large and beautiful estate known as the Butternuts. The original home was built in 1874 for Nathaniel Kellogg Fairbank, who was president of the N.K. Fairbank Company, which was Chicago's leading manufacturer of lard oil refined products. Now that's just a fancy name for soap. Mr. Fairbank's home was so large that it took up roughly the same area as these first 3 homes in the subdivision. Now shortly after the home was completed in 1875, it burned to the ground. However, firemen, family, and servants were able to save the furnishings, the handsome wood trim, ornately carved mantelpieces, and even the original blueprints. Undeterred, Mr. Fairbank had work begin that following Monday morning to rebuild the home for its original plans. It stood here for the next 80 years and stayed in the Fairbank family for 4 generations until 1955, when it was torn down and the property subdivided. Back in 1895, a 5-hole golf course was added to the estate grounds here. It was here on Mr. Fairbank's golf course that many of the millionaires living at the lake were introduced to this relatively new Scottish game of golf. Later that year, they established the Lake Geneva Country Club that we'll see over on the South Shore.